I truly mean no disrespect with my statement here. And I appreciate everything that you've done in terms of doing your background work, both for Imperial Oil and IDT. But what I get from this meeting is that you're asking for our input so that you can come up with justifications for what you've already decided, not asking us what we really think and taking that into consideration.
I would disagree, but thank you for
I
making a
don't doubt
comment.
that you do.
And I understand your view, but I guess what I would say is that what we're asking this meeting is for you to bring up information we can look into, we can work on, we can answer. As far as saying, well, I've already talked about how you get the permit and where that process comes from. And unless you change laws, some of those things are going to stay the way they are. As would be appropriate, because you certainly wouldn't want laws changed for you that would impact you on things that are of interest to you on an individual basis either. And so I think that this is an appropriate function of government, and I'm comfortable with what you're saying. But I also think that you should be understanding as well of what it is that occurs. And this is not a vote, this is not a process of saying how do we get, I mean there's millions of people and we're getting input so that we can make this plan that's underneath this permit. We can make this plan the best that we can make it. And so if there are things that need to be done, whether they're things that you brought up as far as delays and 15 minutes, that we can make sure that we get that the best that we can, you know, to make their plan be a reasonable plan and a safer plan as we can get it. And we're hoping to hear that information. We've heard a lot of good stuff in this meeting, so it's not just an exercise. Definitely not an exercise. In the very back, you have not asked a question.
We've heard that Montana has more stringent rules than Idaho has. What kind of conversations have we had with the people in Montana about how they're dealing with this process? Obviously, you've got to have approval by both, otherwise the thing's stuck at the top of the mountain. So where do we, what's the situation as far as Montana is concerned with this whole thing?
Yeah, we're in the process with Montana. And let me back up a bit. The amount of work that we have to do in Montana is significantly greater than...
Could you speak up?
Oh, sorry. Is significantly greater with respect to turnouts. In Idaho, there's adequate existing turnouts or what we call clearing locations all along US 12 for us to comply for 15 maximum minute delay. In Montana, that didn't exist. We're using a total of 100 and, let me step back. We're using 48, sorry, we're using 48 existing. We have to modify 22, and we have to build 53 new terminals. We also had to raise roughly 570 utility lines. That's a combination of electrical lines and communication lines. When we were reviewing this with MDT, they have rules in there that they could issue a categorical exclusion if they wanted to, because all the work that we're doing is within existing right-of-ways. It's not outside existing road right-of-ways or power line easements. However, they said, with the volume of work we're doing, we think we should go this extra step and go through what they call an environmental review. And we said, okay, we're willing to do that because we did most of the homework anyway. It wasn't extra work for us. So we went through this environmental review process. We they created an environmental assessment document. We went to public meetings because, again, the regulations in Montana are different than in Idaho. But the big difference was the volume of work that we had to do in Montana that MDT decided we better go for a public meeting environmental assessment, where at the end of this process we received all the comments. We're preparing the responses to these comments, and MDT is their decision should be coming out probably in the middle of July. But we were talking with them on Friday, going over the next steps of preparing responses to all the comments. And they're quite comfortable that we did the right thing in Montana for the amount of work that we had to do in Montana. Again, the volume of work that we had to do was an order of magnitude bigger than what we had to do in Idaho.
So who hasn't asked a question yet?
I haven't, I'm curious, what if, this is for the oil man up there, what if Idaho and Montana are both denied a permit? What's your plan B? Are you just gonna fold your tent, or what's gonna happen?
If we refuse the permit, then we'll have to look at alternate ways of getting equipment to,
Such as?
we haven't, we would have to look very hard and say, what can we make? Can we make these modules in Edmonton to complete our schedule, even though it's more expensive? We'd have to look at that.
But you haven't considered, you don't have a plan B right now, you haven't considered that?
Right now, we're thinking of going through Montana, and based on our discussions with NDT, we believe eventually we'll get a permit. If we don't, well, we're going to have to change permits. But we have enough time to do that if we were forced.
Yeah, it's, to answer that question, Kathleen just got an update from Boise. Arrow Bridge was built in 1972. She wanted to make sure that, good engineer, she wanted to make sure he didn't leave the room with getting that across. So I apologize. Right, I don't think
Yeah, there's a outfitter in Kamiah and Liz Lockheed who was put in the pavilion. He took out a tape measure on Highway 12 and found that for a number of miles along the Lochsau River, there'd be only 6 inches clearance for some of these loads for many miles in this area where he also mentioned that you could stand on the fog line and spit into the Lochsau River. So it's give you an idea of the topography there. I was wondering if that's accurate and if that's really enough for a driver of this sort of load.
Well, that really just rolls right back to the question that I answered earlier about a test module. See where it tracks to make sure that the module that they have, that they have gone out and done survey work rather than just with a tape measure to determine what their vertical clearances are. They're confident. We're not as confident. So what we want them to do is to test their facts. I think the guy asked me that question earlier, is to make sure that they can actually perform that. And so they will bring a test module through and make sure they don't hit them. So that one will be proved before a single full load would go through. Yes. Doral Hoff, our maintenance engineer, I'm sure will be out there.
No, we've driven that, I myself have driven that road 6 times. We've had drivers from Mamook drive it just as many times, of looking at all the curves and doing survey work to make sure that the modules can go on that road. If we didn't feel we couldn't do it, we wouldn't be doing it.
So it's more than 6 inches?
Oh, the maximum width of the module is 24 feet. So some cases you have 22 feet of road, okay? The axle is 16 feet wide. And so 24, you're going to have a foot on each side of the 20-foot wide road going down. But there's adequate room along the side of the road. Okay, and the modules are high enough that any obstacles on the side won't be
Stay right here.
Well, the test module that you're discussing, why hasn't that been done already? I mean, you've gone this far, why wait? Why is this waited?
They would love to run it right now, but they also need to run the test module through Montana. And so if they've got to get, they have to get a permit from both states. We haven't issued them a permit until we actually get all of this plan in that they're working on, which is still in the work in progress, although Ken mentioned they just sent us an updated version of it. I don't know when, last week?
Last week we uploaded.
Okay, so we just got the new version of this plan. When we're satisfied and we've got this information process and make sure we've answered these questions, then they'll be able to run that. We don't want them to run that down there and just make a mess of it. So they have to first demonstrate that they can meet all of our 15-minute requirements. Then they're going to actually do it physically on the test run. That's kind of why it's something. I don't believe you've asked a question.
No, I haven't. My question is, what is the penalty for exceeding the 15-minute maximum? And if I'm following one of these things and I'm stuck there waiting 25 minutes, who do I complain to get my, to get them penalized for this?
The penalty is very strict for them. If they don't meet the 15-minute requirements, and there's always some leeway in what we'll allow as they get the kinks worked out on them. But if they're not meeting the 15-minute requirement within a reasonable close, they would not be able to get another permit. So for them.
If I'm following them, where do I complain? If I sit there longer than
You
15
can call
minutes?
ITD and let us know the segment and where it happened, and we will have some people, at least, I know initially we will, to make sure they can accomplish this. That will be out there on the site to make sure that that does happen, that we're not causing excessive delay, just like we would on a construction site. But, you know, and it should be a controlled environment once they get to that point. So it's, you call ITD's number, and 799-5090. Have you asked a question?
No.
Please do.
I'm concerned about the Arrow Bridge, which we just, quick research, found out is 38 years old.
Yes.
Did I hear you say that there is enough weight for the module to cross it, but not the push car?
Kathleen? I'll let Kathleen answer that.
As just to be conservative, they don't need the push cart on the Arrow Bridge, so we just said disengage it, just to keep the weight down. So we haven't, I don't believe we analyzed it with the push cart because it's not needed.
So I'm picturing the push car not weighing much compared to the 580,000 pounds of the module. It's sort of like a straw that breaks the camel's back. Doesn't sound,
No, it
sounds a little scary about the Arrow Bridge.
I wouldn't call it the straw that broke the camel's back. Again, they need the push car for certain inclines, and on the Arrow, they don't need it. So we asked them to detach it